Okay, so I'm walking. I'm walking. I'm in the rainforest walking, by the way. And I'm in the rainforest walking because this episode right here, we are in beautiful Panama City, Panama, Gamboa, because of the topic as well. So walking along one of the many trails that they have here, some are paved, some are all through the mountains. And when I get to the other end, we're going to actually have an interview with a great guest from the area. But man, let me tell you, talk about a world traveler. This guy has been around the world, done so much in his previous career. But now we're talking about while we're here, and that is breaking free. Okay. Making the life you want to live. Now that means you got to put in time, you got to put in work. But hey, if you're willing to do it, it's waiting for you, Basically, seize the day. Best way to put it. I love my quote, seize the day. So, welcome to another episode of The Ambition Show. I'm your host, Aaron Muhammad. Let's get it. So thank you everybody once again for joining us for another episode of the Ambition Show podcast. This is the first episode of the new season. And thank you so much for continuing to listen, continue to join, subscribing, commenting. You guys have been a great audience. And thankfully, because of you, we're able to keep this going. The main focus of this entire show, of course, as you know, is to be the best podcast for entrepreneurs, whether you're a creative entrepreneur, podcast for entrepreneurs of all ages. Doesn't matter if you are, just starting your business, you have had a business before, you're trying to level up, you're trying to grow it. The whole purpose of this platform is to support you guys with the advice, the tools, the information that you need. Because frankly, when you start a business, it's scary. When you start any new venture, it's scary in general. Any new adventure, a new path in life. But there aren't a lot of tools out there that are practical tools. A lot of stuff that we hear, it's a lot of great ideas, great inspiration, things to help you keep you motivated here and there. But it's not a lot of the tactical stuff. It's not a lot of the practical stuff. It's not a lot of the stuff that, when I'm doing my business taxes, what should I be doing? It's not, when I'm writing a business plan, what are they looking for in these particular areas? It's not a lot of, I transitioned from my 9 to 5. What were those steps I took? When I started, left this business or left this job originally. And that's what this is all about. This is the real world advice. Like I said, if you're a creative entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. If you're starting out with a franchise, it doesn't matter. This is the real world advice from people who've been there, done that, things that have worked, things that didn't work, and what we're learning from them, right? Because that's really a lot of times how it goes. You test, and you see what opportunities are there. And what better way than to kick off a new season, to kick off more opportunities to help entrepreneurs, right? And help small business owners out here, than to speak and start speaking with more entrepreneurs who have been there, done that. As I mentioned in the very beginning for the first season, we're going to have way more interviews. We're going to have way more conversations with business owners who are in those positions you are right now, or who were in that position one point, right? And how they got to the next level, how they transitioned their business, opened their business, sold their business, right? We'll have entrepreneurs and small business owners from those areas. Maybe they leveled up by selling one business and transferred and going to another. So we're here in Panama City, Panama, not Panama City, Florida. We're in Panama City, Panama. And for a number of reasons, there's a couple big events going on. But one of the biggest, of course, in the world is the number of world leaders that are actually changing right now. And Panama is no different. This year, they're electing their new president. And it's a pretty interesting vibe down here. It's a pretty interesting feeling right here. It was hard to find some space to actually record quietly. Even in the co-working places that we visited, and even a few places, it's just amazing the energy that's down here, where people are talking about, the elections that are coming up, because it's not just the presidential election. It's actually all major leadership positions, right? Their entire government could completely change over. It's really interesting how it works down here. And this is a growing hub. It's interesting how this has changed, which is so crazy. You don't hear about it as much as you think you would, especially if you got down here to experience it. If you do a little more research, you may find it, but take some digging. This is a growing hub for remote workers. Now, the funny thing about it, not so much the startups, but the remote workers, right? And that is a big difference. So, we'll get into that a little bit more with our interview today, and we'll get a little bit more into our conversations. But taking that first step is the hardest step, right? Taking that first step is always the biggest challenge. And that's what I wanted to talk about in this episode. This is a great place because we've met a lot of people who have done this. They've transitioned from the 9 to 5 into starting their small business, or they transitioned from their 9 to 5 to, taking that side hustle and developing it and kind of re-engineering their side hustle into a small business or into a startup. And that's actually what's helping the community down here grow and transition from, like I said, a lot of remote workers, but now you're getting a lot of startups down here. A lot of people are looking at the opportunities. You have the Panama Canal here. You literally have one of the wonders of the world. You literally have one of the most important one of the most important tools and resources to commerce in the entire world right here. So it makes sense for you if you're looking to transition, you're looking to start a business. This should be a hub. It can be. This should be a hub for everybody to think about, right? When they're really trying to say, you know what, I want to be in a place where commerce is strong. I want to be in a place where people are talking about business, finance, banking. It's happening all down here. It's happening all down here. And honestly, it couldn't happen in a more beautiful place, because you're thinking like, well, do I want to be stuck inside in the office all day? Well, no, that's the great part about seeing the world and seeing different environments, because you also get to hopefully you get the opportunity, you have a long enough trip, get to immerse yourself in the culture, and you will see the way business is conducted down here. You will see the way people go about working hard. And I'm telling you, man, it's a lot of hardworking people down here, like anywhere else, but they're doing it in their culture, they're doing it in their way, and it's awesome to see. So what better way to kick off this season, right? To help you make that first step, to help you take that first step, to help you, maybe you need the motivation, right? Maybe you need the inspiration. Maybe you need to see wonderful, beautiful beaches. And you're like, well, you know what? I want to work somewhere like that, or I want to start a business in a place like that, right? What better way than to fuel your ambition? Yes, shameless pun. I'm going to keep those up. Then to kick off this season, meet with some great entrepreneurs down here, have some fantastic discussions, and share some fantastic information. Most importantly, the information you need to make that transition for yourself. What better way to kick off this season than to kick it off right here, where we are right now, Panama City, Panama. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to go over three essential steps that you have to make when you're trying to make that transition, right? And we're going to take you from trying to actually doing. Once again, going to keep going over it, because you know what? Doesn't hurt to go over one more time. Doesn't hurt to have the repetition here. The purpose of the show is not theory. It's not just a bunch of great ideas or a bunch of ideas, shooting from the hip. No, these are things that you can take and put into practice to help you make that transition, to help you go from, this is my idea, this is my passion. Now, how do I make it my business? How do I make it, even if you start off with transitioning to the side hustle and then making it the full-fledged business? Because like I said, it's a lot of testing. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to happen overnight, right? It takes time. But what we're going to start off with is going over 3 steps. That is literally a very straightforward 3-step process, right? From that idea to application to implementation. You got a pen and paper? Write it down. If you're old school, it doesn't hurt. I keep a notepad. You've probably seen a bunch of videos and pictures of me online where I constantly have a notepad with me, right? It's just something about putting pen to paper. Nothing wrong with it. Got your laptop, your tablet, your phones in your hand, listening to the pod. Boom. Open up your notes. Open up your Google Docs. Open up, Microsoft Word. Doesn't matter. Take notes of this and then immediately start applying it. So in other words, giving it dates, putting a date on it. What are the actions I'm going to take on this date? Right? What are the goals that I'm gonna seek to achieve? Because the whole idea here, once again, is application, not just theory. right? We could talk about theories all we want. We could talk about ideas and strategies all we want. We want application. We want implementation. We want achievement. So with that, what are those 3 steps? 3 steps, very straightforward. Number 1, discovering and defining your passion, what drives you. Number 2, skill development and mastery. Okay. And number 3, building a personal brand and network. When we come back, we're going to go over those 3 steps, those 3 critical pillars that you need to fill in the right information being what pertains to you, what drives you, what you need to do, what you need to add. And as I go through it, you're probably going to say, oh, I know what this is, especially if you've been to a business course, you know exactly what we're about to go over. But it's a very unique, specific way to you, not just a general business practice, but it does play on a very well-known, very important business exercise. When we come back to the Ambition Show, see you in a minute. Okay, y'all. So those 3 steps, broadcasting right here from Panama City, Panama, loving every bit of it. Like I said, it's a lot of noise, a lot of music, a lot of traffic. The traffic here is no joke. Let me just call that out right now. I know I sometimes go on these tangents and sidetracks. Sorry about that. But the traffic here is no joke. I will say this, and that's how you know you are in a major business area. You're dealing with some serious commerce because people are constantly moving on the go from meeting to meeting. Yeah, you got a lot of virtual meetings going on, but you got a lot of people like to sit down face to face. And I mean, once again, in this weather, in this climate, the cafes, there's a ton of cafes over here. In fact, you know what? I'm going to pose this to you guys. Before we even get to the 3 steps, I'm going to pose this to you guys. If you guys want to know more about Panama City, Panama, right? And not only just like I said, a lot of people working remote, a lot of digital nomads, but the people who are coming down here and doing their startups and the places to meet up, right? The places to visit, good hotels, cafes, places for meetings, co-working spaces, ton of co-working spaces. If you want to learn more, we even have our interview in one of these great co-working spaces. So if you want to know more about that, let me know, drop a comment. What we could do is we can make sure we come back down here. Cause I mean, it's a great place for you guys to know you might need that. You might need that change of environment. And that actually goes to one of the points we're going to touch on in these 3 steps. And in this episode could really help you in just getting kind of those basics, but we could do a whole episode talking about just this fantastic business environment that's down here in Panama City, Panama. And in fact, not just a business environment, it's just overall the beautiful culture in Panama, but specifically starting that business, getting your venture off the ground, kicking off that startup, transitioning from maybe you retired from one field, one career, you want to transition to another. It's a great place for that too. Met some awesome people who are doing that as well. So to that point, I'm going to go through the 3 steps, and then I would love for you guys drop a comment if you know exactly what this is, this business exercise. So number 1, discovering and defining your passion. Now, no one can tell you, right? No one can tell you what makes you tick, really. No one can really tell you what drives you. No one can really tell you what your passion is. You can have people kind of help you and kind of guide you and give you a little bit of, additional, coaching or advisory, things like that, because maybe they've been there, done that, but they really can't tell you, right? And this is one thing that hurts a lot of people in business. They're thinking, oh, I got to do business this way because everybody else did it that way. I've got to do business this way because that is the way to do it. Well, obviously, look at the world we're in right now. We're in the world of disruptors, right? The thing that drives you, your passion, you could have a passion for doing any business, technically what can become any business, right? But you could look at it a whole different way. And you know what happens, unfortunately, when you hate to say, I kind of look at this as literally like child's eyes, right? Because children, anything is possible. It's when adults start telling them no. It's when the world starts telling them to stop. Don't do it like that. You can't think like that. You can't say. But children, that's why we have these great imaginations, even as adults. But when we're children, flying is nothing to us. The idea of flying, yeah, we can fly in our brains. Yeah, of course we can. We can make anything possible. So what are those hobbies? What are those activities? What are those things that you love and enjoy so much? Have you ever noticed that people who really excel, and I do mean this, really, really excel, right? And I'm not talking about just from a financial standpoint, which is what a lot of people think of success. I'm talking about a person who just enjoys what they do. Those are the people, they just love doing it. They just love the work. They love the industry. They love the music, right? They love film. The boring work is not boring because they know I'm working in what I love to do. The boring work of doing line reads. I love the more and more I find out about filmmaking and storytelling. It's so interesting how you think about the little things that people never talk about or don't even know about when it comes into making a film or making a TV show. All those little things. Even the term I just used, line read. If you look it up, it is not exciting. But people do this for film and television all the time. All we see is the finished product. As a web designer, I know this all too well. When people say, "Oh yeah, I want my website to look like Amazon." Yeah, you want it to look like a page off of Amazon, but everything that goes behind that, it's a lot of tedious, boring work. But the people who have a real passion for it and what they do, they know this is just a journey that I have to take. So what is that passion? What is that interest? What is that fuels you and pushes you and drives you? Write that down. Write those things down because it might be silly to somebody, it might be silly to everybody. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because this is about what drives you and what define your passion is all about. Taking a deep dive. What are the things I like to do? Journaling, taking notes. If you think that's crazy, well, why would somebody like to journal? Why would somebody like to take notes? Well, journalists, writers, people who conduct amazing interviews. I've worked with research analysts. And the questions that they're asking, you're thinking like, wow, I wouldn't even think to ask that question because they like to write their thoughts down and really take a deeper dive into what they're thinking. So whom better to have on a project as an analyst, as a research assistant? And I know what you're probably wondering. You're like, well, how does this go to owning a business? Well, think about it. All of these jobs have to get done. If I'm the worker, if I'm the person actually making it happen. Now let's take it to a deeper level, right? And look at a big picture. Well, what if I've designed software that did this? I brought up the group LegalZoom, right? I brought those guys up numerous times. No background in tech. Legal standpoint is what they were looking at, which made sense. A lot of the companies that are changing the way we do business is because people are like, I have a passion for this, but I know there's a better way to do it. I have a passion for this, but I think we can do this differently and more effectively. So where's your passion first? That's the first thing. Get that down on paper. Now, once you've pinpointed that, right? Once you've gotten very specific and direct about your passion, what drives you, what motivates you, the things you like to do. Not every hobby has to be a business, right? That's why I said write them all down. You got thousands of hobbies? Cool. Write down 1,000 hobbies. What are potential paths when it comes to a career? And remember, you're defining success for yourself. You're identifying, well, this is what I do 9 to 5. You notice I'm not really talking about that 9 to 5 aspect because that's there. It's going to be there. It's going to stay there. And it might stay there for a while. Let's be real. You might have that day job for another year or two, but what you're doing is you're going to build out. Maybe I don't want to rely 100% on my 9 to 5. Maybe my 9 to 5 is my play money. Maybe my 9 to 5 is my money just strictly for investments. Maybe and that investment could be your venture, could be your startup, could be your small business. So those passions, those hobbies, everything you've written down. Next up, the career path out of them. Career path could be, well, and this is the one, I'll be honest with you, this is the one that you'll be shocked. There's a lot of them that are not there. You'll say, I don't see that being a career because you know what? You haven't taken the deep dive and researched more. Because a lot of people stop at the surface level. We got these great machines called computers, right? And a fantastic tool within them, search engines. Google, Yahoo, Bing, doesn't matter. Research. Identify the different career paths. Identify the different companies. Now, we're really going to start to get into something that's going to help you as the business owner. Because if you start noticing there's their career paths, their positions, but maybe there are not a lot of companies that do the whole thing, right? Maybe they just have a position at a company. There's not enough tools for those positions. They're using very generic tools. Like, okay, they use in this position, they constantly are focusing on PowerPoint, Microsoft Word. Well, those can be used for any field, right? Those are tools to help us present information and communicate. But maybe there's a better way of doing this. Maybe there's a tool that specifically they need for this career path, for this passion that aligns better to that work. You as the person who, this is your hobby, this is what you enjoy the most, this is what you love the most, you probably identify that before anybody else. Before anybody who's a product manager, before anybody at Microsoft, before anybody at Intuit, any software development company, you may notice that way before them because they're so focused on the nuts and bolts of how a system is built and works. They're not thinking about, okay, what are the practical problems a person is facing in that position? And this is why I said you'll find the companies when you start doing this research, because then you'll say, and you'll clearly be able to identify, is there a market demand? Is there a target audience for that? Is there a need for my work? Is there a need for what I'm passionate about? In other words, a need from a customer standpoint. Here's the big one. Is there something I need being a fan? Is there something that I need being a hobbyist? Is there something that I need that this is my personal passion? And how many of those people are out there that think that need the same thing that I do? Well, maybe I'm the person that's going to deliver it, which goes into the next step. Because all that's discovering and defining the passion, right? Self-exploration, and then you do the research and you do the validation, right? But the next step, skill development and mastery. Because if you identify, well, wait a minute, there is an opportunity here, it's just no one's fulfilling it. There is an opportunity here, but there's no company, there's no software or maybe there's a company, just not software. And I tell you, this is where people are seeing a lot more success than anything else. This is why we have so many web developers popping up. This is why we have so many programmers popping up. But there's still not enough, because there's not enough that work for other companies. There are a lot of people working for themselves or trying to work for themselves. Maybe you don't want to be a developer. Okay. But I can tell you, once again, there's a lot of developers out there, and they probably have not identified those problems. I'm going to give you a good example of this. I'm going to give you a real good example of this. And this is a platform I think almost everybody is familiar with, at least on the content creation side, right? So if you're in content marketing, you're in content creation, I know it's very general. I know there's some major YouTubers that I follow who hate the term content and content creation because everything's content technically. But maybe you're in content marketing, or maybe you are into, vlogging and blogging, things of that nature. There's probably the biggest platform, right? Probably the biggest platform for this. And you may know it as well. I'd be shocked if you don't know it. But if you don't, that's the whole purpose of coming to the show. That's the whole purpose of this, is to find out. Is to use this podcast as your research. Use this podcast as your tool, your weapon to help you out. Probably heard of this little platform. It's been around for a little while. It's called Patreon. And the funny thing about Patreon is that one of the founders, right, the co-founder of Patreon, I heard him speak at 2 events. Now, the first event was years ago. I mean, we're talking, I think literally after Patreon only been around for maybe two or 3 years. Actually, no, he even said it. I have a video, but I believe it was like after it only been around for about 3 years. It was really interesting to hear Jack Conte, who was the one who said it. He was the co-founder. I thought initially he was just a tech guy. I was like, okay, he made this great platform. Something that I clearly saw would be great for anything that of the people I was working with. but also for myself as a content creator or as content marketing for musicians, for artists and small business owners. But I found out he's a musician. And of all things, he's a musician who said, hey, this isn't there. I need something. Let me build something. This is exactly what I'm getting to you. This is exactly what I'm bringing to you. It's exactly how I want you to think, at least from this step. When you're really trying to conceptualize it for yourself, you try to understand it for yourself. You might not have the skill right now, and that's okay. Right? That's perfectly fine. That's why you start off with your passion. You start off with what you enjoy the most. You start out with what's most important to you. Then, if you need to acquire the skills, if you need to go for further training, if you need more education in a particular area to help you implement, not, and this is why I say we're not talking about theory and concept, just concepts, to implement application, to make it happen, to bring it to reality. That's this purpose. Although not a tech person, although not a person who's, trying to rival, the technology being developed at Apple and Facebook or Meta now, of course. Jack was like, no, I just want to build something that will help other artists like me. We have fans. They want to support us. We could have more fans, and they just don't know who we are because they can't access us easily. And remember, when Patreon came around, for my music people, I hope you listen to my music professionals. I know y'all listening. Y'all better be listening because we old friends, Come on now. Support a brother. Okay. I went to all y'all shows. I bought y'all EPs. Yeah, I bought CDs, man. Okay. And MP3, but I bought a lot of CDs too. That's a lot of CDs that stack up. Anyway, thinking about it, he's like, we have fans out there who may not be able to reach us because they can't get to, or they can't find, or they don't use CD Baby all the time. They don't use Indie on the Move all the time. They don't use Reverb Nation all the time. Yeah, that's right. I said all those names. You're probably, if you're in the music business, you know those names. Okay. Those platforms have been around for a while. But what about the people who just want to buy a t-shirt? Because those are devoted a lot to the hardcore music fan, and that's great. But we might have people who might just like one song. Maybe they just want to support us on a monthly basis. Say, hey guys, you know what? You came to my town, you had a really good show. I bought a shirt, or I heard about you, missed your show. There's so many ways you could have fans, you could have followers, you could have supporters. Let's connect with them on a different route. That's the passion for what you do. That's the person who's genuinely interested in what they love to do every day, day in and day out. Thinking about other ways to connect with people. And yeah, you might not be able to develop the platform for yourself right off the bat, but you can find them. And like I said, you may not have those skills right now. Hell, you may never acquire all the skills, right? And then that's not the point of this. The point is to say, well, what do I need to get to the next level? You're writing this down. You should have 3 columns. You should have 3 groups. Well, maybe I need to understand more about finance. Maybe I need to understand more about maybe web development, right? Maybe you do want to build it. Maybe, and here's taking the heavy lifting out, right? Because it could be as simply as maybe I just need to know how to conduct an online course or lead an online course or design an online course. You see, we often make it so heavy. We often make things so, these large like moving mountains. And it doesn't have to always be that way. In fact, it's very rarely that way. It's the little things. And it's taking, like I said start off with one step. I didn't say run the whole race. I'm talking about one step. Listen to the podcast. That's one step. Now, you've got your list. You first define your passion. Now you're identifying what skills you need and what do you need to master. Maybe the skill is I just need to hire better people. If I have my small business and I need to grow, maybe I don't need to hire better people. Maybe I need to find a person, work with a person to hire better people, to hire a better team, to hire a team. See, it could be anywhere. That skill development mastery could be anywhere. Now, apply it. Get your reps in. What are the things I need to do to get the reps in? Well, maybe if I'm building a course, let me work on outlining the course. Maybe if it's web development, I need to take a boot camp and build really scrappy couple websites for myself. Those can become your future landing pages. I'm giving you that because that's what I did. Some of the first websites I built, they became my landing pages. And I understood what the landing page was before I got to the whole full freaking platform, because that's what I was doing. I was getting my reps in. Volunteer work, freelance. Before I start my full-fledged business in my own corporation, maybe I just freelance, have a DBA. That way I can get the ins and outs, and then I can identify what's the best way to incorporate. Do I want an LLC? Do I want it to be a full Inc? That type of thing. Get your reps in. That's how you go from just that first level of skill development into mastery. But you'll never be a full master because you should always be learning, right? You don't stop learning, you keep it going. Final step. When you get it under your belt, and this is the best part about it with this step, it's actually being created from those other two. Because that practical experience, right? Well, you're meeting people, you're connecting with people, you're building relationships, where you're getting that education, or you are developing relationships, right, with people to help you and grow the business, or to start the business, or to even see if it's a concept you want to take and make it into a business. You're building a network. And people are seeing who you are day in and day out, which is truly your brand. What you do every single day and what you don't do every single day is your personal brand. It ain't all this other special stuff that people keep throwing. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of other things and elements to it, right? To branding in general. There's a lot of tactical and strategic things and operational things. But at the end of the day, just like a company, that's the best part about this. This is no different from a company. Your brand is everything you do and everything you don't do, everything you say and everything you don't say. If you are a person who doesn't use profanity, that's a part of your brand. I'll say it again. If you are a person who doesn't use profanity, that's a part of your brand. I know you probably weren't even expecting me to use that as an example, because that's just how little things like that get overlooked. And that's why a lot of people don't fully get the concept of branding. Because it's something like that goes to a brand. If you show up to work every single day, 5 minutes early, that's your brand. If you show up to meetings 15 minutes early, that's your brand. You've heard people say the term. I can imagine most of us have had this. I know I have this. When somebody say, "Oh, well, this is what Aaron did today." Well, that's on brand, because that is literally what a brand is. It's what you're doing every day. It's what you're not doing every day. It's what you're saying every day. It's what you're not saying every day. Case in point. An old job I had. Never forget this, because it was one of the few times, right, that I related to my work, kind of outside of work, if you will. So everyone knew. After work, Aaron's going to the gym. After work, Aaron's going to the gym. Never failed. 2, one of the times where I didn't go to the gym, because it actually wasn't every day, but I did it so much that people thought it was every day. Someone saw me, I didn't have my gym bag with me, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're not going to the gym today?" And sure enough, that's not on brand. And I thought about it, I was like, you know what? That is my work brand. Even though I'm at work, it has nothing to do with work. But the people at work knew this. Even if I didn't mention it to them, even if I didn't say it to them, they didn't see my gym bag. They're like, whoa, you're not going to the gym today. That's off brand for you. That's not that's not what I expected to see. That's not what I expected, coming from you. Even though I didn't even mention anything. They just noticed I didn't have my gym bag right next to me like I always did. And like I said, it actually wasn't every single day, but it was so consistent, to where it was 4 or 5 and sometimes 6 days a week. Like I said, it wasn't every single day, or I should say business days, because unfortunately I did go to work on Saturdays. Unfortunately, that happened too many times. But when you look back on things like that, you're like, wow, that is my brand. So with step 3, which is building your personal brand, building your network is going to see what you do. Your network is going to see what you don't do. They're going to understand how you move. They're going to pay attention to how you work, to where you won't even realize it. Like I said, I was shocked that somebody even noticed it. I was like, wow, I never even really thought about that. So establishing that brand doesn't take a lot. That's why when people go out here and they do all this personal branding, they're like, oh my God, I got to have a logo. And hey, I do branding, so I understand. I understand the importance of wanting to have that consistent message. But it's when people are trying to change what that consistent message is without being consistent with the new message, that's the problem. That's when they face the challenges. So if a person is seeing you passionately, feverishly, just put that dedication and time into something, they're going to want to join your team. They're going to learn what you're working about. They're going to want to connect you with other people. That's your network. And that's what you want your network to know about you. That's what you want your network to say about you. And these are the things these are just the critical elements to identify. This is where I'm at. This is where I want to be. Working with the right people who know your brand, who want to be a part of your brand. Identifying those skills, identifying the people that you want to work with, but identifying the skills as well that you may need to acquire, or that you need to take it to the next level, or you need to even get it off the ground. And at its heart, out of all of this, it comes back to that very first step, your passion. What are you willing to put that time, effort, and energy to acquire the skills, make the connection, do it consistently, and work with the right people? Get it off the ground. What are you willing to put that dedication, that time and effort to make that boring work? The work that just happens without a problem. When you define that passion, all that other stuff doesn't get easy. It's never going to be fully easy. It's not going to always be 100% stress free, but it just becomes part of the journey. And that journey, you're willing to march, you're willing to walk, you're willing to run, because you know that at the end, really isn't at the end. It's just the next stage that you need to get to. And you're looking forward to the next stage. Now, by focusing on these areas actively, you can effectively transition from having a passion project, a personal passion, a hobby, transition and turn into a full-fledged business, your small business, your startup that other people want to be a part of and other people want to support. It's literally those critical 3 pillars. Critical 3 pillars. What are my passions and hobbies and my interests? What am I willing to dedicate time, hard work, and energy into? What skills do I need? What do I need to do to transition it from just the hobby, the passion project, into a full-fledged business? Who are the people I need to work with? Who are the people I need to identify? What are the resources that I need? You've built your brand right there. Those 3 pillars are the critical pillars when you're making that transition to leave that 9 to 5 behind and make that passion project, that passion hobby, your real career. Because career is not something you're just going to give up one day. right? That's something you want to do for the rest of your life. That's something you want to do your entire life. The 9 to 5 is something like, it's a job, right? And that you can leave behind. So with that, got our 3 pillars. We've listed them out. We have an idea of what to fill them in with, but it's going to take time. Take some more research. What are the industries? What are the positions? What's the software? What's the technology? Who are the movers and shakers? Who are the influencers in that area? What are the groups? What are the clubs? Maybe the social media and social networking platforms, right? That I should know about, that I should be interested in, that I should find out more about. That takes time. It's not going to happen overnight, but you're starting right now by listening to the podcast. You're starting right now by the sheet of paper, the document that you pulled up and that you're filling in right now. So when we come back, we're going to talk to somebody who's successfully made that transition, successfully started up not one, but 2 great ventures, And we had the pleasure to speak with him right here in Panama City. Fantastic interview, fantastic conversation. Welcome back, everybody, to the Ambition Show podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Muhammad. Thank you once again for joining us. Now, we went over those 3 pillars, right? Identifying and defining your passion. Number 2, developing the skills and the mastery and understanding the industry, understanding the field we want to get into. And then finally, and definitely not the least most important, but last, definitely not least, personal branding and networking, right? Defining these 3 pillars and filling them with what are my passions? What are my hobbies? What are my interests? What am I willing to dedicate that time and energy into? What do I need to learn? What skills do I currently have and what skills do I need to acquire? What people do I need to connect with? And what am I showing? And what am I saying? What am I doing on a consistent basis to develop and to truly live my personal brand and the brand that I want people to see, the brand that I want to live and I want to be the most proud of? When we get these pillars firmly established, it takes time. Like I said, it's going to take some time and research and energy and effort. Once we really establish those and get those going, we got to make that transition. We got to make that leap. Like I said, that first step. Look at it as the first step is listen to the episode and taking the steps to identify and update and build these pillars for yourself. Now, right here, we have the opportunity to speak to somebody who's made that transition, to somebody who's done exactly these things, identified their passion, applied their personal brand to an entirely new venture, to an entirely new world, but pulled skills, pulled resources, pulled the knowledge and the information, right, from that 9 to 5 life, from that previous career into their passionate work. And now it's not a side hustle. Now it's a full-fledged business, worldwide, well-known. In today's episode, we welcome the opportunity to speak with EDGAR TEJADA right here in Panama City, Panama, who has not built 1, but 2 businesses. And like I said, one of the growing hubs, place you should really think about to build a business, to help your business thrive. And you can pull a lot from his experience as we go into our interview now of how to make that transition from that 9 to 5 into your passionate work, your passionate project that becomes a great entrepreneurial venture. We welcome EDGAR TEJADA when we come back. Welcome back, everybody. This is the Ambition Show with Aaron Muhammad, and I am joined by a great guy that has saved my life, I think, honestly, being here in Panama. He's guided me around, done great translation, and take me to some awesome food. EDGAR TEJADA, thank you so much, brother.
Pleasure, Aaron.
Thanks for coming by and stopping by and being a guest. So let's talk about the Panama Tourist Company, because a lot of people, as I mentioned before the conversation, that people are transitioning, people are changing things up. And, you know, you seem like you've really, you made a great experience for me. This is my first time meeting you. But what got you into the business? Tell us about the company and how you got started.
Sure. Well, thanks a lot for having me. And I guess the main reason I started getting into the travel and tourism industry is that I love to travel, right? So to start off, I've always loved to do it. I've actually lived personally in many different countries, and I've also traveled to over 30 countries now. And so I myself have been a tourist and taken lots of tours
Okay.
in lots of different countries, right? And so that's been a wonderful experience. Number one, obviously, some great experiences, some not so great ones.
Of course.
But overall, I think having been the customer, so to speak,
Okay.
on the other side,
Right.
I think has given me a good perspective on what I think would be good to offer to somebody that's looking for an experience, right?
Gotcha.
And then two, the other part is that I actually studied history,
Oh, sure.
and because I studied history, and obviously that gives you a really nice perspective on different cultures and why things are the way they are. That when you get into this kind of work, then it really helps enrich it and give it some perspective, some background, so that, for example, if you're showing somebody something, you can explain a little bit why it's relevant, right? Not so much reciting facts, but just like, hey, this used to be that, or
Right.
this happened because of X, right?
Exactly. So, real quick, because I want to, of course, get more into the company, but you said 30 countries you've been to. So, roughly, I don't know if you know them off the top of your head, but what would you say the best country you went to? Best country you visited?
That's a tough one, but I would have to say one of my top is the United Kingdom.
Okay.
So I love London. London
Right.
is one of probably my favorite city in the world.
Really?
Right. And I lived there, and I've also visited there, before and after I lived there.
Okay.
And the cool thing about London is it's constantly evolving, right?
Right.
So
It's one of those
even
kind of
though,
cities, yeah.
it's got a lot of things that people always traditionally go see,
Right.
it's kind of like New York, from what I've heard, which ironically I've never been to,
Okay.
despite the fact that I've been to a lot of places. I've never been to New York.
Okay. That's a big one.
Yeah.
We got to get that happen. We got to make it happen.
Sure. And so London definitely
Okay.
is one. Two, I actually really loved Cuba.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Cuba was really, really interesting.
Right.
And it's actually kind of the opposite of London, in the sense that I've only been there once. It was actually my honeymoon with my wife. Uh, but it's the opposite, because it seems like it hasn't changed
Right.
for 50 or 60 years.
Right. So the other side of the coin.
Right. So it's kind of like you're that movie Back to the Future.
Oh,
like
yeah.
you went back in time, something
We
like
might have
that.
some young people. Y'all need to watch it if you've never seen Back to the Future. Come on, Marty McFly.
Great movie.
But no, so sorry to interrupt you. So Cuba for sure. Well, I'm assuming, was it Havana or was it another specific city?
Havana and other cities.
And other cities, okay. And in London, United Kingdom being top. So, as a guy who's been to so many places, and as you mentioned, you've been to so many places, so you've seen the good and the bad of tours, like the tourism business. What attracted you to tourism business in Panama? Like, what was specifically about Panama?
Sure. So I think one of the first things was that we don't really have a well-developed tourism industry, right? In the sense that there's obviously a lot of great things to see and do, but we haven't really developed the priority as a country on tourism that I think we need to get to.
Okay.
Right? Because I think in a lot of countries you notice it as soon as you start researching your trip there, and once you get there, that it's very well structured, and that it's something that's a priority for the country and the people.
Right.
And I think that's still evolving here, right?
Okay.
So that's one side. But then the other part is that I enjoy it, right? And I think one of the things I've found in my professional life is that if you don't really enjoy something, like you just maybe you're even good at it,
Right.
but you just don't do it with the same zeal and passion. Right? So
that's reality. That's the reality. So you brought up a really good point, and this is of course the topic of the show. And one of the just in our conversations, one thing I noticed immediately, I was like, oh man, it's amazing how the world brings things together, right? You talked about how, like, okay, you may be transitioning, or you're coming from another world, another business, another career. What were you doing before the tours company? Because I don't think you've been doing this like your whole life.
No, not at all. And actually, I've been 20 years primarily in technology. Right. Okay. So, I've been a tech leader in different companies. So I worked for over 10 years at Dell in a lot of different leadership roles, especially in services.
Okay.
I worked for almost 10 years in the government, managing citizen services in the Innovation Authority, which is kind of like the CIO of the government for Panama. And I also worked for Samsung doing strategy for Latin America.
Okay.
So a lot of different types of companies
Right.
and also consulting work.
Right.
So, in general, I would say mostly I've been in technology,
Mhm.
consulting, and in services my whole life. And I think that even though it doesn't sound like it would be a natural
Yeah.
transition, a lot of the things that I learned and did in those roles are a really good segue into what I'm doing. Obviously, the people part of dealing with, let's say, a visitor from another country,
Right.
that's more of a an interaction thing.
Right. Exactly.
But at the same time, when you're in those businesses, you're dealing with customers constantly, and so that really gives you a good perspective on how to handle, anything from objections to, understanding why people are unhappy with experiences that they have, and so when you start to build, your business, you try to take that into account so you anticipate those things.
Exactly.
And the other part is just the technology behind your business, right? Because nowadays, of course, most of your sales channels, most of the way you interact is through technology.
100%.
So, because I had to manage all that,
Right.
it's a very natural fit.
You're like, I got this. You're like, I can find my way around a little bit. And that's a good point. Like a lot of people, I think sometimes they miss that you can take things from what you're doing right now. Like maybe if you have an entrepreneurial vision in the future, you can start taking pieces of, okay, well, I'm learning this, I'm mastering this, and I can transition this and bring this over to the other side. So no, I like the way you brought that up and how you found kind of just a natural transition, from one another. Because like you said, especially now, everything we do is so steeped in technology. Everything. I mean, from what we have set up here to where we are, and it's this awesome facility, which I will ask you about. It's a great place you found for us. Once again, like I told you, come to Panama. You got to talk to this guy, and he's not paying me to say that. So you came from so many years background in technology, now over to Panama tours. So tell us, not necessarily giving away all your secrets, but like because we're going to pay for a real tour. Tell us about Panama. What do you think is great about Panama, and why do you think this is actually a really great place for people like yourself, like an entrepreneur, startup person like myself, as another entrepreneur, startup owner? What are the things that would attract us to Panama?
Well, I think just to start off, number one, and this is important for all tourists, right, is that it's very convenient, right, especially for North America. Panama's really close, right? So Panama, to start off, if you're looking to take a trip and you're starting to look at different locations, of course, you're going to want to explore different options. But Panama, relative to most of the major ports of entry, Miami, New York, Texas, California, it's all, the longest it'll be is 4 or 5 hours. So that immediately, eliminates a lot of obstacles because sometimes people don't want to take a long trip or, be overnighting and doing things like that. So just from the convenience point of view of distance and language, it's very convenient because even though our official language is Spanish, we also have a lot of English speakers, right? Sure. And a lot of people who have stayed living here or moved here. So there is quite a bit of infrastructure in terms of people and businesses that speak English, right? And so those two things are a good starting point for why it's convenient. Now, obviously, that wouldn't be relevant if we didn't have something interesting to offer and show.
Of course.
Right? But that
something
also
kind of interesting.
sure. And so it definitely doesn't hurt that we have a wonder of the world.
Exactly.
We have a canal, right? In addition to a lot of natural, attractions, right? From beaches to mountains to biodiversity.
Yes.
We have actually like one of the highest concentrations of bird species.
Wow.
Butterflies.
Yeah, I've heard about butterflies.
We have got so many. All sorts of different mountain animals. I think from what I can tell, right, and I'm not an expert on this, but from the fishing point of view, I think it's one of the few places where you can fish on the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, and you can have, what's it called, lake, so Sweetwater.
Sweetwaters. Okay.
So Sweetwater fishing. So even those types of things, are nice because let's say you're coming with your family, right? And let's say, you got a couple parents and kids, you got different activities that can appeal to different people, right?
Yeah.
So your kids can have a great time at the beach. Maybe the parents can go shopping. Maybe they can go and look at some history and some culture because we got the Spanish colonial past, and it's a great night spot as well. You can go out with your significant other and have a couple glasses of wine and stuff. So lots of things to do that appeal to lots of different kinds of people.
Good point. And it's so funny, like the diversity of like the people that come here, and I'm going back to one thing, just looking at just the industry here. It's amazing. You brought that up in the tours, but now you're talking about it, which is a very good point of just how people can come here with their families. They come here on a honeymoon, significant other, just on a date, whatever. Maybe you have so many different things, and it's a great place to, have such the type of business that you have. I can imagine all the different types of customers and clients that you have. So, we talked about really how, kind of transition and everything. What do you see as like the best the best way for you to market your business? Like, because you have so many different people to connect with. You have so many different types of people who want to travel here for different reasons because it appeals to everybody. How do you market yourself? How do you really get yourself out there and make sure you have that right target audience that you're looking for?
Well, I think in any business, that's always an evolving thing.
True.
But I think speaking to, I guess the basics of it are you always need to have different channels, right? You always need to have different distribution channels. The main ones are obviously online, right? So you have all your traditional platforms like TripAdvisor, Viator, and those types of platforms, which are kind of like the most well-known. And the ones that are used most massively. But there's lots of other ones that are less well known, right? Like, for example, Tours by Locals is one that's really popular. And obviously that's usually when somebody's looking for a more personalized experience and are willing to pay more for it as well. So, you have to first look at your own type of business and what you want to achieve. In my personal case, I would say it's more of a boutique business in the sense that, I try to handle either individuals or small groups or, a group of friends or a group of colleagues. And it's not something where you might necessarily find yourself, touring with somebody you don't know. Right. And it's meant to be that way from my perspective because I want to be able to provide a personalized experience, which I wouldn't be able to do if I have to give a standard tour where I can't deviate from the itinerary.
Reading from the script and everything.
Exactly, right?
It's like, yeah, it's nice you want to see this, but no, we got to stick to this, right? Got you.
Yeah,
so you really customize it more so.
Exactly, right? So, what I try to do is communicate with the person before they arrive, right? And try to understand what they'd like to accomplish. And then, if they say, hey, I'd really like to hit this spot, I say, okay, well, I have a tour that covers most of those, so we can switch around this spot for this one, or, give them different recommendations. And then we adjust both the content and the price and everything to whatever it is they want to accomplish. Right?
So yeah, you truly do customize it to them, which is awesome. And that makes it a more enjoyable experience overall. Because I've had those tours, even in my own city. I've had a tour where it's like, dude, I know all this stuff already. Like, you're not really showing. I know half these people are already from Chicago. Why didn't you kind of make it based on what we were looking for? And it's a smaller group. So definitely appreciate that from experiencing it myself. Definitely appreciate that. So is it just you, your one-man army, or do you have a team? How does it work?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have my one-man army, right? So in general, I do everything myself. I do have some help from a couple of different administrative folks that I hire. But usually it's more like third-party services, right? To help me with specific parts of the business. And I also have some independent tour guides that I work with sometimes if I'm unable to handle a customer and I really feel like it's necessary that, I handle them within my scope. Because sometimes what I'll do is, be honest with the customer and say, hey, I'm busy on that date. If I can't take care of you on another date, then I'll recommend someone. Or, if they insist and, it's something that I feel is necessary for me to handle, then I'll say, hey, I can take care of you, but I'll need to have this person help us out with that. But in general, I would say 95% of the time, I'll take care
It's
of
all you.
everything personally.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that's understandable. You live, but once again, you're doing it what's best for the customer, and that's really what it's coming down to. And that's, I know from my own experience as a business owner, that's what the customers prefer.
yeah,
Just you're attending to us, you're really being empathetic to us and what we're doing, and you're really treating us like, hey, we're the special person at the moment. So that's really awesome that you can work with others in the same industry. And speaking of that, so uh, do you see growth? Because you mentioned how basically like there really wasn't like a setup or an infrastructure really for like tourism and things like that, even though once again you do have one of the wonders of the world.
sure.
um, do you see more growth in the industry here? Like how's it going? How's the industry looking
Yeah,
here?
absolutely. So we've had a couple ups and
Okay.
downs in probably the last year, 2 years. After the pandemic,
Of course, yeah.
of course, there's been I guess a boom in travel
Mhm.
in general around the world that's getting back almost to what it was before the pandemic. But in Panama in particular, because the country itself hasn't promoted tourism as actively as we would have liked,
Right.
it's something where each company, in a sense,
Okay.
has to do kind of that heavy lifting. And so,
Okay.
sometimes it depends a little bit on the seasons.
Mhm.
From where your customers are from, right?
Okay.
So obviously, in the sense of North America, for example, U.S. and Canada, you can really tell when are there travel seasons,
Good point.
which tend to coincide with when we become busy,
Makes sense.
right?
Makes perfect sense. It's like watch what they do. Oh, the big boys. Okay. And that's actually a really good point. Just thinking about I've noticed that with other countries too. It's kind of like if a big event is happening in a neighboring country nearby, they know what's about to come their way. But like you said, you guys have to do a lot of that heavy lifting down here by yourself.
Sure.
So from that perspective, going back to a sense of the marketing, what platform has been most successful for you when you're doing that kind of stuff? Like you're seeing what's happening in the world, and you're like, well, am I utilizing TripAdvisor, Airbnb experiences, tours by locals? What has been the more successful platform and why for you?
Okay, well, I think in the sense of volume,
Mm-hmm.
obviously Viator, that,
Okay,
that seems to
that
be
makes
the,
sense.
the one that generates the most traffic.
Okay,
Um, but I think the best one for me has been Tours by Locals,
really? Okay,
um, in the sense that the customers there tend to plan more in advance.
okay,
So, for example, in Viator, you tend to get a lot of those customers that, will reserve at the last minute or the day
gotcha.
before kind of thing.
Yeah,
And they're like, I just got into town and I need to think of something to do
right.
kind of thing, right? Whereas the ones on Tours by Locals, sometimes they've contacted me 6, 8 months in advance
Oh
and
wow.
said, I want to do this, and that, and I work with them actively on their itinerary for a while,
Okay.
right? And so it's something where they might say, I want to do this on Monday, I want to do this on Tuesday, I want to do this on Wednesday, right?
All right. 6 months in advance, though. That's
So yeah,
yeah.
so the customer profile is
Yeah.
quite different,
That's a
right?
huge difference, though. Yeah, I'm thinking about like a lot of people I know. It's just hard to get them to say, "Are you going to take a trip in 6 months?" Let alone I know I'm actually planning it out right now. So that's more like my style. I'm more of a 3 6 months person kind of,
Yeah.
but that's the project manager. That's
Well,
the problem.
there you go. But in that sense, that's why I think I enjoy that platform more,
Okay.
just because a you can really cater more to the person's interest that way,
Okay. Okay.
because sometimes there's things that you can't, even though we're in this industry, there's
Yeah.
certain things you can't plan.
Right.
If it's like from one day to the other. So sometimes somebody says, I want to do this, but it's something where you really have to reserve it or book it or
Right.
get a deposit, with advanced notice.
Yeah.
So you can't provide that experience that way.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. No, that's a really good point. But I'm really shocked because I've recently I will say, yeah, probably like the last few months, I've noticed that platform, Tours by Locals. I wasn't like you say, it wasn't like one of the most talked about and one of the most promoted as well. But that's really interesting to hear. I would like to see how many more people, like other tour guides and actually other people who've maybe had experiences with it. I should use it.
sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a great platform because actually I found you through TripAdvisor.
Yeah.
So that's like that's another big search engine in general for
Yeah.
for all aspects of it. So when it comes to like when it comes to what you're seeing in changes with the industry and whatnot, not just Panama, but just in general more overall with the industry, what technology are you seeing that's coming in and impacting and changing the industry?
Well, one is definitely WhatsApp, right?
Okay.
So WhatsApp has definitely been very powerful,
Okay.
not only in Panama and in Latin America, but I think, for example, if you take the U.S., people tend to use much more text messaging and SMS.
True. True.
But outside the U.S., everything is on WhatsApp, right?
Very good point.
And so that means that that's a very important channel, not only for day-to-day communications,
Right.
but also for sales, right? Because the fact that WhatsApp is part of Meta and it's connected with Instagram and Facebook means that all those platforms are connected.
Yeah.
And if somebody, let's say, looks you up on TripAdvisor, Viator, then they find you on Instagram, and then they click to contact you, and it comes on WhatsApp. So you do need to have all those things integrated, and you do need to have a presence on all those platforms. Right. Otherwise, you're losing out a little bit.
Right.
So I think, and so I think, when perhaps there might be people in this industry that aren't, that savvy on technology, I think it would be a limitation, right?
No, because 100%. Yeah, and I can imagine your background, and you're probably an early adapter. Yeah. You can take it on a little bit, and I can understand. Like a lot of people are afraid of what they don't know, but it's also just one of those things. Like you gotta. I was told by a very successful business person I mentioned years ago on a post on LinkedIn, grow or die. It's like, you got to change, you got to grow, you got to evolve, or you're just going to fall off at some point, which is completely understandable. So with that, where do you see a lot of your, because especially, it's funny you mentioned WhatsApp and how big it is, of course, outside the U.S. Where do you see a lot of the your guests or your clients coming from? Like, what countries do you normally see them coming from?
Sure. So the majority is from the U.S. and Canada. We do have some customers from Asia, for example, South Korea, Japan, but I would say it's on a lesser scale. Same with Europe. But I tend to focus a little bit more on North America just because, what I was mentioning before, like geographically and operationally, that's the country that is most having travelers coming in and out of the country.
Exactly.
So I try to focus most of my efforts on that. So, for example, my website, all my platforms, they're all in English, right? They're not even in Spanish, and I live in Panama.
Right. Right. But you cater to the customers that you primarily see. No, that's understandable.
That's right. And so obviously, if we get customers from South America or somewhere else, of course, no problem, right? But, I have to focus the majority of my efforts on where, my bread and butter is.
Exactly. Exactly. No, 100%. And that goes back to just marketing, target audience, target demographic, what you're focusing on. Like you said, if you do have that, great, you can adapt to it, which is awesome. I can imagine that you probably have an advantage too, because I'm not sure every tour company, I know I've spoken to at least one where I was going to say everyone that worked there did not speak English, which is understandable. They had one or two people who were fluent, and it kind of made challenge because if that person's busy, then it's like, what you going to do? So going back, sticking with the industry, if a person wants to get into the industry, now I know Panama is a very, very unique and very special, but just in general, a person transitioning maybe from that 9 to 5, transitioning from, especially let's look at from the IT world, what advice would you give to them? Like, what would you say to them? Like, hey, this is something to look out for when you're first entering this industry.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, I would say, really look into whether you enjoy being around people and meeting new people every day. Because I'll give you a perfect example of what used to happen to me. I've taken a few cruises with my wife. Right? And I don't know if you've ever been on one of those.
I have not been on a cruise yet. Yeah. So,
well, they always ask you whether you want to dine with your party or with a group, right?
Okay.
So they always ask that every day when you book your time to eat.
Right.
And my answer was always, I want to eat with a group.
Okay.
And my wife's answer was always, I want to dine just with you.
A party, right? Okay.
And it's because I naturally gravitate to wanting to meet new people.
Right.
And I enjoy it, right? So that's why I think for me, this industry is perfect, because in this way, it is my job to meet new people every day.
You're always eating with the group.
and I'm always eating with the group. So that there's that part, and then there's the other cool part, which also naturally feeds into the business,
Right.
is because I'm constantly moving around town and taking people places. I naturally see what's new and what's happening, and so it helps adapt the tours so that you incorporate new things that might be popping up. Like, for example, when I took you to with the coffee tasting experience,
geisha coffee.
Oh
my God.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? But I wouldn't have noticed that if you're not out and about and checking things out, right?
Makes sense.
And so I think specifically for this business, in all businesses, you got to stay relevant. You got to do your research,
of course.
But in this one, even more so, because people always want to do and try new things, right? And so, if you don't enjoy meeting new people, and if you don't, I guess, either enjoy or don't know how to, I guess, stay in touch with what's going on in your community,
kind of finger on the pulse,
then it might not be the best fit for you, because because it's a challenge, or you might want to get into something associated with it, but maybe like a different area, like booking,
a little bit more isolated, if you will,
right? Exactly,
kind of behind the scenes, as they say,
right. And I mention that because when you deal with people, you get all sorts of different people, different totally different personalities, religions, tastes, allergies.
No, that's a really good point,
right? And so if you aren't sensitive to that, if you're not aware of that, you can get in trouble or offend people or something. Right?
That's a valid point. The part that you said, especially about like different allergies or religions, I'm just thinking from my own perspective when you were asking when we went out, you showed me this great restaurant, awesome restaurant, by the way. I went back there again, literally 2 days later. But yeah, you're asking like, okay, here's every the food. Do you have any allergies or anything like that? And I say, hey, well, I don't eat pork. I'm Muslim. Okay, and you guided me to what. It's important that you have already been there. You already had an idea of what to look out for in that menu. But you like you said, you naturally do it because it's what you like to do anyway. So it's not work. And that's what a lot of people do from what I've seen. They turn, I want to make this great hobby or this passion of mine into a job, but they don't really think about the other aspects that go into the work. They're like, I don't want to do all that stuff too, and part of yours is, I just love the fact that I'm thinking of something technological. I'm thinking of something industrial. You're like, no, human level. Do you even like being around people? Yeah. And that's a great point. Keep that in mind, people. and it's serious. It's like, because that could have destroyed the whole experience for me. I'm thinking from my perspective, so I can imagine for other people.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. So with that, because you like you said, you found a couple places, and the geisha place wasn't originally on the tour. No. Keep that in mind. This man listened. That's all you got to do is a little listening. Goes a long way with any project, any business. I told him I love coffee. I want to see some of the best, like the coffee shops or cafes, whatever you can think of, whatever you can find. He went out. He was already going out, already doing his thing. But then he was like, hey, he found the best experience. Honestly, one of the best coffee experiences just to learn about the geisha coffee and to get to purchase some of the geisha coffee. And we had met a great guy, Raul, who gave us a great tour as well. What would you say? What's one of your favorite places on your tours to go to? Like, be selfish here. It's all good. Be selfish.
So I would say number one is I love the restaurant that I took you to, right? Which is one of the Panamanian food restaurants.
In La Fonda?
Yeah.
In La Fonda. Okay. Did I say it right?
Yeah. and the reason is that, there's lots of places that have Panamanian food.
Yeah.
And there's lots of places that have Panamanian dances and shows.
Right.
But there's very few that I feel like I could take a customer any night.
Okay.
And it'll always be an experience, right? Okay. And the reason is that, a lot of them will say, okay, well, I have a show, but it's only on Friday night.
Right.
Right? Or, people will go to the restaurant, but it might be kind of dead, on a Monday or a Tuesday. And so what I always like about their particular location is that not only is it, like, always got a very cool, like, fun vibe, but they tend to make every single night, like an experience, right? And everyone I've ever taken there had a good time. Like I've never taken a customer there and it wasn't,
Yeah.
you know,
There was
like
a lot of life in there, man.
exactly right, and that's important because you know if I just take you and okay, you tried some food, you know,
Right.
that wouldn't just do it, right?
Exactly.
So it's got to be something where the person will hopefully go back to you know their home and they'll tell their friends, "Man, I went to this place. I had a blast. The food was great.
Right.
You know, the music was going. It was nice. You know,
Exactly.
and that's why I think for me it kind of encapsulates everything that's great about Panama because we are friendly and our food
Right.
is good and our dancing is good, and so I think it helps bring all that
Yes.
together.
No, it was literally. I think you summed it up perfect. It was an overall great experience. Like you said, it's not just you go to a good restaurant, have some good food. That's awesome. You can see maybe a show or something like that, but it was a lot of life, a lot of energy. We saw what was it? A person running for mayor?
Yeah.
It was a potential mayor, a mayoral candidate, and also a senator, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Yeah.
She was like so. Everybody goes in there. It's popping. it's a popping spot. But the food was amazing. Like and it wasn't heavy. Overall great experience. So I can understand that's why that's one of your favorite places. So just I always ask this, you know, and if you don't have one, that's fine. I'm a quote guy. I love a quote. Is there a quote or a saying or something that you know maybe inspires you, or you maybe put it in your business plan, or something that you long for, or something that kind of helps you with motivation? Is there a quote that you reference, or maybe even a quote you share with other people a lot?
I think it would probably be something similar to what I was telling you earlier, which is, you know, do something you love and you won't work a day in your life.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great one. And
I don't know who said it, so I'm not taking credit for it.
We're not going to take it from you. If we find out, I'll tag you. I'll make sure it don't demonetize me, please, Lord. But no. That's a great point, and I that's why I say I love the fact of what you came back to with just what's the best thing or what's advice you could give with something very honest and very, but it's to that point. If you really are trying to get away from something, why would you create a more chaotic, stressful world for yourself? So build something that you don't really work, you just enjoy doing. I love doing this. It gives me the opportunity to travel, meet great people like yourself. I'll be honest with you, perfectly, full disclosure, I'm an introvert. But this stuff brings me completely out of my shell because I love to meet people who are doing what they love to do. Yeah. And hopefully, prayerfully, we can help other people do the same, because what's the point of living, if you're not enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for example, I used to have, a journal when I was a kid.
Okay.
And in there, I wrote the things that I wanted to do when I got bigger. Right?
Okay.
And I said I wanted to be president of my country.
Of course.
I wanted to run the 49ers, which is my favorite football team. Okay, and I said I wanted to travel the world, and so maybe I'm not exactly traveling the world, but it's something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so that's also what we were saying is if I'm talking about history, culture, my country, football, or any of those things, I'm loving it because it's talking about things that I really care about.
There you go, and you're doing it all. You're doing it all the time. Okay, so I love that. I'm not going to let this slide. 49ers?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not knocking 49ers. Steve Young was my guy back in the day. So I'm not knocking that. Jerry Rice, those are my guys. But how'd you become a 49ers fan?
So it's a long story, but my mom was a Fulbright scholar.
Okay,
right?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so she got a Fulbright scholarship to study, or not study, but do her studies in Washington, right? So in Seattle, Washington.
Okay.
She was a professor at that university, but her job wasn't going to start for some months.
Okay.
So I went to live in Los Angeles a couple months before that with my family, and the 49ers and the Rams had a rivalry there. Right. And for some reason, I enjoyed the 49ers more than the Rams, which were the local team.
Right, I was going to say, that was your team. Right? Well, the local team. Right?
Yeah, and I went to watch a couple games, and I just ended up liking them, and it just kind of stuck with me, right? Yeah. And it was only a place I lived in for like 3-4 months, but, sometimes just,
you can't pick it. It just happens.
It just happens.
Right? No, I do understand that one. I'm from Chicago, and I'm hey, I believe the Bears.
Yeah.
Okay, well, really, I believe the Blackhawks. I'm a hockey guy. But, Bears, I always would love to see them succeed. But honestly, growing up, same thing. It was something about what the 49ers were doing that was just like, oh my God, these guys are amazing. And I really hate the Cowboys.
Everybody does.
Everybody does. So it's like, the Niners were the best team to knock them out for at any point in the NFC. So I can understand that completely. But that's awesome. So do you still follow them like closely, or like so you're watching the Niners getting everything? So
yeah. I got my NFL Network subscription. I try to go to games.
Okay.
At least every other year, I try to get up there and have my little fun to see if I can save and go watch a Super Bowl one of these years. Yeah,
so you guys got the 1-man cheat code back.
Yeah, there you go, man.
So I know you loving that, and so with that, just want to finish with gave us a great quote, gave us some great advice. Any other advice that you would give to anybody in the business, in the industry now, that currently working in the industry that you could share with them? You gave advice to somebody maybe entering or trying to enter, thinking about it. Advice that you would give to somebody who's currently in the business. Maybe they're struggling, or they're looking at it not necessarily from the same perspective as you, that you could help them with, because clearly you've done very well. Clearly, I looked at your reviews. That's why I picked you. I review everybody before I go anywhere with them. And you have really great reviews. So any advice you could share?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, really try and figure out what makes you tick, what you like to do, right? So I think we covered that, but also, what sorts of things can differentiate you from other people, right?
Okay.
And so, for example, in my case, when I started doing that inventory and starting this business, I had a lot of conversations with my wife, which is another, piece of advice is always listen to your wife.
Definitely.
Right? It's great advice in all levels. Right?
They say the better half for a reason.
There you go. And so the other thing is she said, well, you don't have like a big infrastructure. You don't have, a lot of different vehicles.
Okay.
You don't have the advantages that a big corporation would have.
Right.
So focus on making what makes you unique your advantage, right? So in this case, for example, one of my major advantages as a business is the fact that I have traveled everywhere, that I speak English well, that I manage technology well. So if I compare myself to other businesses, I feel like my website, my social media, everything is better than my competitors.
Okay.
Right? How I can interact with my customers and the experience I can provide them is superior to theirs. Not, meant to disparage anyone, but just because, if I, for example, have lived in the States and I speak English well, it's easier for me to connect with somebody than perhaps somebody that might not have lived there and may not speak as well, right? So it's just, it is what it is, right? And you got to take advantage of what your strengths are.
100%, 100%. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you if I am. No, I was going to say you literally just gave a SWOT analysis. like you took, these are my strengths. This is what I can do best. These are the areas that I'm not. Yeah, you're right. I don't have all that infrastructure there from like you said, the trucks and maybe even other people to help you out and everything. But it's those advantages that you've taken from your past experiences. Yeah. It sounds like also, especially the fact that you traveled. I can only imagine, how that's helped you with other people who are traveling. Sure. Because like you said, you've seen the good tour and the bad tour. So that's a really good point, guys. Focus on your strengths, not other people. And one thing, not to go too far on, but just to say one thing I always think about is, I don't look at it as having competitors. I look at it as having contemporaries, because what they're doing is good for them, not necessarily best for me, because I have to be my own brand. Right. So always keep it to your own brand, everybody. So with that, Edgar, man, it's amazing. First off, an amazing tour. You TripAdvisor, Tours by Local, whatever platform, find this guy. If you're coming to Panama, you have to find this guy. Thank you for a great interview. Thanks for a great conversation. Not even an interview, just a conversation. Great conversation.
Hey, really appreciate it. Anytime. Loved being able to share a little bit about what makes our country great, and I'd be happy to help anybody who's coming and show them around as well, so they can also have a great experience.
Fantastic. We would love to make sure they come into you, man. To you. Sure. So Panama Tourist Company, where can we find you online? Where can we find you?
Everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So we got YouTube, we got Instagram, we got Facebook, we got LinkedIn, Twitter, all of them. And we're also obviously on the EDGAR, we're on TripAdvisor, Tours by Locals, Get Your Guide, and a couple others that I can't even remember because there's so many.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. Actually, Get Your Guide. I was like, wow, you mentioned Get Your Guide. I totally forgot about that one too. Like, I would usually go with V8 or TripAdvisor, but yeah, I was like, man, Get Your Guide. Damn, forgot about that.
True.
Well, everybody, so you know where to find him. YouTube. He's all over the socials, and it's the same tag. It's the same tag, Panama Tourist Company. So look out for him, and you can see the experiences from others. You can see my experience. You can see me putting my name, my plaque on at the point. What was the name of the place? With the zip
Point
line?
Panama.
Point Panama.
Yep.
Go there as well. He will show you a really cool. We got a good video of that too. I'm going to make sure to post that as well. The good video of us going around the history of Panama. It was awesome. A little trapdoor. You didn't even know was there. This guy led me to it. Thanks again, Edgar.
Pleasure, man.
Appreciate it, my man. Thank you. Signing off. We'll get back to it on the Ambition Show. Peace. That was a great interview with Edgar Tejada. Thank you once again for joining us. Thank you once again for being a awesome guest. And we're still here in Panama City, Panama. So I do want to close us out, but you guys, let me tell you something. You go where you're empowered, go where you're inspired, go where the energy is for what you're focused on, whether it's your entrepreneurial venture, it's your small business, going for training, coaching, if you are going to school. You want to go where you're getting good energy. Energy, in other words, of people who are doing the same things you are, who are on the same wavelength, where you can work with potential mentors, where you can have great roundtable power sessions, mastermind sessions. I know that's a term that gets thrown around too much, especially it was a buzz term for so long and far too long, and people have really diluted it. But honestly, a true mastermind session where you're working with people, like-minded people who have the same focus you are. And that's what I'm saying right here. This is a great environment. And I tell you right now, even if you guys don't want us to come back to Panama City to check out just how much this is becoming a hub for entrepreneurs and startups, I'm coming back here anyway because this is a great place for it. I mean, he's got great businesses here, just like Edgar's business. Great opportunities are being created all the time, and like you talked about in the interview, it's all about applying what you know right now, finding or connecting at least that to your passion, right? And just going honestly putting all your heart, soul, effort, and energy into it, and just going as hard as you can. So I wouldn't be doing you guys credit if I didn't make sure that we have this whole process, this whole format. Got to stick with it. We do have a book of the episode. We do have a what to read, because the thing about it, the responses I got, and I will say this once again, thank you so much for the feedback on the past season, and prayerfully we have some great feedback on this season as well, and we're keeping adapting, and adding more elements to it. But one of the things I got was, hey man, I have never heard of that book, or I checked out this book, I purchased this book. So we want to keep it going. If you guys have suggestions, we didn't open it up enough this before. If you have suggestions for what to read, a book for an episode, I put out there, even a podcast or even a YouTube channel, put in the comments. We have our core spaces. There's a link to our core spaces in this episode, as all the other episodes, and drop. Hey, this is what we are seeing as, hey, this is a great book. This is a great author who has a fantastic series. Let us know, because frankly, that's the whole point. The whole point is to connect and build with this community, right? And to share. It's not to take in information and hoard it. That's the exact opposite of this platform. So the book of this episode, right? And this is a book you can apply any episode, really. Honestly, this is a book. I discovered this book a few months ago, right before planning this trip. I was looking for, something not only that went aligned with what we're going to talk about in the episode. And then I met Edgar, which I was like, this is the perfect book. I already read it by this point. I'm like, it just works out nicely. By Marianne Cantwell. This book, it not only fits this episode, but this is just, like I said, once again, in general, you need to apply it. And I would suggest when you purchase it, when you pick it up, my suggestion kind of what I did with it. Discovered a few months ago, like read it once, sat it down, which is very rare. I don't just read it once. Usually I'll read it like 2 or 3 times, back to back right away, just to really absorb it. This case, read it once, came back to it a month, roughly about 45 days later. I would say the same thing. Read it, apply what you can, then come back at it. Reason why. What Marianne lays out, right, and be a free range human. It's not just about this whole idea of like work-life balance. It's work and live the life that you want. And it kind of goes to a saying. I said this to a friend some years ago. I'm like, a lot of people, they say, oh man, I want to live a certain life. I want to have a certain life. And I said to my associate, I was like, we live the life that we settle for. We build the life, right? But we really live the life that we settle for. Because a lot of people say, I want this out of life. With all due respect, they won't pursue it. With all due respect, they'll find something in the way of them pursuing it. Now, we all have different challenges in life. Hear what I said, different challenges in life. My challenges are not yours. And I will never say that yours are, oh, you can easily overcome that, or you can easily not. We're not going there, because we know that's not reality, right? Everybody has to face different challenges, and everyone's in a different position. So I can't compare mine to yours. You can't compare yours to mine. One thing we have to keep in mind, though, is that it's not going to be free of challenges. Even if you have $1 billion in the bank, you're going to have challenges. Even if you own a private island, you're going to have challenges. Even if you own 20 businesses and they're all making you hundreds of millions of dollars, you're going to have challenges. Doesn't matter what it is. You're going to have a challenge. The thing is, are you making more challenges for yourself? It's like the people who they get the high paying job, and you know what they do? Because they don't have good money habits or good money management habits, they incur more debt. They think, oh, if I make more money, that's going to take care of all my debt. That means I won't have to worry about money. No, they just go out and spend more money, right? That's why there's people who, they don't make a heck of a lot of money, but they always seem to have some money in their pocket. They have a nice savings. They have a nice lifestyle because they're not living beyond their means. And that's what I'm saying. It's like we can make our own challenges, or we can make our challenges worse at the end of the day. And no amount of money, business, doesn't matter. That's not going to necessarily solve all the problems. You will always have some type of adversity and some type of challenge in your life. Just one's different than the other. Bring all that up because when you come back to be a free range human, right? It's all about, and this is what we talk about all the time, about application, applying certain practices, having a specific outlook, and really pursuing your passion and living the life you want to live based on your actions, not what other people are telling you to do, but what you do, and being authentic and honest with yourself. That's why I said, read it, put it down, come back to it, see what you can apply, and then come back to it. Fantastic read. Be a free range human. It's a great way of looking at it, right? It's a great concept of living the life that you want to live. And I go back to that saying, it's what you're living. You do what you live the life that you settled for, right? Are you applying certain things? Are you putting certain energy? Are you putting your energy into your passion? And once again, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a billionaire. But I can tell you right now, there's a lot of people that I know, podcasters, who don't have $150,000 or $200,000 or, $10,000 sponsors per episode or something crazy like that, or an advertiser per episode. But they've been doing their podcasts. They're living their best life. They're having a great time. And honestly, these are the podcasters, the ones that don't have a ton of advertisers and sponsors and stuff like that. The ones who they work with a small business, they promote for them. They work for a small business. They have a good, strong fan base of people on Patreon or ConvertKit or Kajabi or whatever platform that they're using to stay connected with their audience, or directly from their website, like we do here at The Ambition Show, right? But they don't worry about all that. I need to have $100,000, every single episode from one sponsor. Their community is there for them, and they love being there for that community. They're living their best life. They're loving the life that they settled for because they didn't settle. They strived and got what they want out of it. And they are more successful than most of the people that you think are successful because they're living the lives that they want to live. They're creating the lives that they want. Be a Free Range Human. Marianne Cantwell. Fantastic book. Like I said, I would say pick it up, grab the link. It's in the description of this episode. Read it. Apply what you can. Then come back. Come back to it 30, 45 days later. What you've applied. Look at those pillars that we've mapped out earlier on. Look what you applied. Are you pursuing? It's not going to happen overnight, right? Not going to happen overnight. But are you pursuing the life that you want to live? With that, one of the best ways to do it, we mapped out a plan here. We have a great template for you in this episode. You can download it at theambitionshow.com. It is a business plan template, but there's a little bit more to it in this case, right? Because it has those pillars there. And it's a really cool tool to use if you don't use Canva. I mean, I tell you, I've mentioned Canva so many times, like gone crazy with it. We do Canva tutorials, all that stuff. Upload into Canva, edit it, and make yourself a nice visual. It's already designed for it to be a printed out wall business plan. So not something you're going to like make a file and save in Dropbox, save in Drive or something, never see again. No, it's meant for you to print it out, update it, edit it, print it out, put it on the wall, right? Canva is an awesome tool where you can get posters made out of this stuff, right? They have great printable templates. Throw it in there. If you have a business logo, pop your business logo in there. It has a place for all that. The idea is that you're looking at it every single day. You're saying, hey, that's the life I want to live. This is what I want to pursue. I've got my pillars mapped out, got my mission mapped out. I got my purpose statement right there in front of me. Let's go get it. Let's make it happen. Right at the top of the show, I always say, what? Let's get it. In this case, let's get it. So with that, thank you so much for joining us at the first episode of the second season of The Ambition Show. Really appreciate you guys and all your support. Grab the book, Be a Free Range Human by Marianne Cantwell. Download that free business plan template, right? Like I said, it's meant for your wall. It's meant to go right there, right in front of you. You can see it every day. Edit it in Canva. Great tool, fantastic tool. We do Canva tutorials all the time. So definitely stop by the website, check out Core Spaces where we're talking about things to do in Canva, ways to utilize it for your small business or your venture. And also, thank you so much to EDGAR TEJADA, the first of many guests this season. Really appreciate the words of advice and words of wisdom, but just him sharing his story, right? And we all have a story. And there's great business owners out here who have fantastic stories that we can all pull little gems from. Remember, I got to make that graphic for gems. I just thought about that because did not do that one. But EDGAR dropped a bunch of gems for us. Hey man, if you picked up something, drop it in the comments. Let us know what you picked up from it, because I would love to know. Maybe I missed something. Maybe one of our other listeners missed something. So if you picked up on a word of advice or a tidbit, hey, let us know. And maybe how you're applying it or how you will apply it to your business that you're going to build or the business that you already have. So signing off. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The Ambition Show. I'll be your host, Aaron Muhammad. Peace. Ooh.